припинити вогонь на 30 днів.
The tone of Ukrainian news reports was professional, but conveyed the surprise felt across the country after its government agreed to ceasefire terms with the US in Saudi Arabia. The presenter called it a reboot. Beyond the headlines, however, few were expecting anything to change. Just hours after US Secretary of State Marco Rubio had said the ball was now in Russia's court, a missile attack on the central Ukrainian city of Kryvyi Rih killed a 47-year-old woman and wounded at least 5 others. Residents there said you needn't look far to see why they didn't believe Moscow would agree to a ceasefire, nor that it could lead to lasting peace.
Peace talks are possible when not only one but two sides have the will to end the war. Unfortunately, we don't see that from Russia. The attacks on civilian infrastructure show this.
I don't trust the Russians. I have never trusted them much. I don't trust them at all.
Others too are cautious. While the broad strokes of the agreement in Jeddah between Kiev and Washington were welcomed, there was consternation about how to make it workable, including from Ukrainian lawmakers.
If tomorrow the Russians said we were the first to break the ceasefire, or we say they were the first, then what? Will they continue fighting or sit down at the negotiating table again? It's much easier to talk about a ceasefire than to organize it. I've taken part in dozens of ceasefires that ended after 3 seconds or several days, and then the fighting continued.
Unpausing US military aid barely a week after it was paused was welcomed by many in Ukraine, but now comes with uncertainty about whether the taps could be turned off again quickly. There are worries as well about the front line in Kursk. Open source maps on Wednesday appeared to show Ukrainian forces no longer in control of the town of Suja in the Russian region. There's clearly some way to go before a ceasefire. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Wednesday warned that there's more needed to ensure that discussions continue in a way that could ultimately end the war permanently.
Everything depends on the fact of whether Russia wants to accept a ceasefire or to continue killing people. It fully depends on this country. The United States of America demonstrated its steps and position. Ukraine demonstrated and outlined its positions in a very direct way, without any reservations, and Russia will have to answer to that. As for the security guarantees, we'll talk about them in more details if there is a ceasefire for 30 days. These 30 days are given to prepare a draft. We have our proposals, but we will draft the steps that we will agree on with our allies and formats of security guarantees which Ukraine will have after the war is over.
Marco Rubio may have kicked off the cliches by saying that the ball is now in Russia's court, but here there have been different ones echoing through the streets. Namely that talk is cheap and that the devil is in the detail. Much remains to be seen about whether a ceasefire can truly happen, much more about whether this really could be the beginning of the end of the war in Ukraine. Joel Flynn, TRT World in Kiev.